Okay, I've drawn in a bird base. As you can see, I've got my nice magic wand here. If you're not familiar with Origami, it might not be a huge deal. You might be able to get by. You can always draw on paper. We're not doing any calculations with Origami, but it's always a handy tool. It's like fancy origami special graph paper. So I have a video about how to use it. Make sure to go check that out. It's a good tool, very powerful tool. Let's go back and look at the steps here. So what have we already done? We already did everything on the left. That was from the previous video. That was the homework to do the stuffs on the left. And then on the next step, grafting, we analyzed the test fold already. We found that we need the legs, head, and the legs and head. And let me actually label where that would be. So there's actually a text mode here. It's a little buggy sometimes, but leg. Oh, whoops. Okay. Well, there's a bunch of legs. Again, it's a little buggy, but let's put another leg up here, and then head. Yeah, so we've labeled it. So our head is up here, our legs are here and here. So we've analyzed the test fold, and we found that these ones need toes, so detail, and then this one up here needs length. So we'll figure out how to do that. The next step is to arrange the graphs in the CP. So as I said before, a graph is incorporating strips of paper. So we're going to incorporate strips of paper into this crease pattern. For this leg, let's just start this leg down here. So we need more paper down here, and that will allow us to create more detail. That was the rule of thumb we learned. So I'm going to make a strip like this. Extend this out. I don't know how much. We'll have to figure that out later. But I'm going to extend this out. And so there's my first strip. Something like that. I know it's a little off. It doesn't quite matter. So I'm going to make that strip. And so now this flap has this much area. So now this flap is this whole box. Rather than being a square, it now has this extra strip attached. It's got more paper, and now we can get more details into it. And I'll show you later, but this will be enough to get us toes. It's a little odd because we're no longer a square. We're a rectangle now. So what do we have to do? We need to make this strip of equal width on the other side, and that will allow us to make it a square. So let's flip it over. So let's flip it over the diagonal so that we get it equally, and erase the stuff. And there we go. So there's the basic idea of our graph. We have this, our bird base, and we added some strips over here, and it's still a square. So let's measure it to make sure. So our length is about 2.3, and our width is also 2.3. So we're still a square. And this just shows the area that we're going to be adding on. Now, if you don't like the idea of adding it on, I'll prove to you that what we're basically doing is we're shrinking in the bird base. So we're shrinking everything else in order that the legs and head might be a little bit longer. We're redistributing paper. We're not adding it on, we're redistributing. So I don't want to get the misconception that we're like cutting and pasting things and gluing and non-origamiing. This is still origami. So let me just show you that we're basically still fitting it into the square. Oh, it's upside down. What the heck? Basically you see now it's the size of the square. This is basically what our new crease pattern is going to look like. Now just remember, we don't know how wide this is. I just picked a random length. And that's what this next one is going to be. Scale the graphs. We still got to figure out what we're going to put into these strips. So we added some paper, and we know it's going to allow us to make new details. We just don't know quite how it's going to do it. Let's switch over to the other camera, and I'll show you a way you can make toes out of a strip. This is not any universal grafting thing, although it is pretty common. So we can pleat it up, and the more pleats we have, the more toes we got. So here, it's going to be the number of pleats plus 1 is how many toes you'll get. So I've got 2 pleats, or 2 mountains, we count the mountains, and then plus 1, so we're going to get 3 toes. And it looks something like this. As a crease pattern, it looks something like this. Got this little M shape, and we'll keep that in mind. We'll go ahead and draw that in later. If you want to shape it for sharpening the toes, you can something like this. Okay, and then these toes are a little sharper, might be a little bit more realistic to birds. So we'll have this ready, and then again, this is what we're incorporating into our design. So that's much better than these little flat feet. All right. So now what's important to notice, what is the length of each flap, each toe? Each toe is going to be 1/4 the width of the strip. See, like this distance here is the length of the flap. So that's something we'll keep in mind pretty soon. We'll use it pretty soon. So let me just draw this in on the crease pattern where we just figured out with the toes. Now let's go ahead and reflect that over to the other leg. Alright, so there's the toes on the other leg. And now we just got to figure out what's going to go in the head. So in the head, we don't quite remember. We said we want a longer neck, and the longer neck will also allow us to have more head details. And so we don't really care about what specifically is going there. We just need it to lay flat. We just need the creases to reconcile. So I don't really know how to explain it, but basically here's how it's going to work. We're just going to do that, and then let's extend them. So remember hotkey E for extend, and then make it flat foldable. We know this is no longer our edge. This is now a valley. And this just, I mean, obviously the hinges need to extend and whatever. There's still more stuff we have to take care of. But this is our general idea. This is, in general, what our new crease pattern is going to look like. So the legs are going to have these little toe structures, and the head's going to have a little longer structure, and we're still a square. So that's the power of grafting. Now we just got these random details for free. Scale. So sometimes you want to scale it first. You want to figure out how big the strip is, how much paper you have to work with, then figure out what you're going to fill it in with. Here we did the opposite. Here we figured out we're going to fill them in with these toe structures. Now we just got to figure out how big they are. And we're going to figure out how big we want the toes to be relative to the leg. So to figure out the proportion of toe to leg, we're going to look at a real life ostrich. So that's what I got over here. The leg actually, we're going to, for the sake of the design, we're going to say the leg goes all the way up to the back of the ostrich. The reason why we are comparing the length from the heel to the top rather than heel to here is because remember that our flap goes all the way up to there. So it just makes things a lot easier if we count the ratio from here to there. So we can eyeball that the toe is about 1/8 of this quote-unquote leg. So we just got to keep in mind that the toe is about 1/8 of the leg. So at this point, when we're trying to scale the graft, what a lot of times you want to do, what a lot of times you'll just do is you'll just guess, maybe put it on a grid point or some other nice references. You'll just guess, you'll fold it, and then you see, okay, do I need it too big or too small, whatever. But let me just show you what kind of math we can do. Let's grab some graph paper. Let's go ahead and calculate. So I'm going to draw in, I'm just going to eyeball what we got. Here's the bird base. Yeah, this is pretty messy. It doesn't matter. And then our graft looks something like this. We don't know how big it is. I'm just going to draw it super wide for now. This is not to scale. This is just a drawing. Remember that this whole thing, we consider it to be 1. We call it, the length is 1 unit. Usually in coordinate geometry, like this is 0, 0. This is 1, 1. That's what TreeMaker uses. That's what most origami programs use. Now let's figure out what length in the crease pattern represents the length of a leg. Let me bring back our old bird base. Look, it has the word leg on it. So here, again, if you're good at crease patterns, you might be able to do this in your head. If not, we'll use the physical model to help us out. This is the leg, and again, we're counting the leg length from the toe to the top, just to make things easier. So that would be this length, right? So when we unfold it, it turns out to be from the halfway point to the corner, and that's the length that needs to be 8 times the length of a toe. So let's go ahead and mark that here. So what is this? This is, let's call it, this t equals length of a toe, and this is 8t, because we want it to be 8 times the length of the toe. And then so this is also ht, right? Because right, because they're the same length. And now, remember what we said about the strip? The length of a toe is 1/4 of the strip, because we got 1, 2, 3, 4. It's 4 lengths here, so, or basically 4t. So in total, what is this whole side length? This is going to be 20t, which is equal to 1. And then t is 1/20th. So that gives us an idea of how big our graft is. Our graft needs to be such that it is 4/20ths of the paper, which is equal to 1/5, obviously. So that's how we know how big our graft is going to be. So if we do this with the graft size 1/5, the toe will be 1/8 of the leg. And that's how we use math in origami. And again, if you don't like math, I don't want to scare you away. If you didn't understand this, that's totally fine. I just want to show you that there is math possible, even like hand-drawn math. But again, you can always just guess and check. You could have tried a 1/4 and a 1/6 and then figured out, oh, I need the one in between. So then you go 1/5. And that's perfectly fine too. So we've just found that our graph needs to be 1/5 of the paper. So let's go ahead and draw that in. Let's go ahead and move this all the way out. Let's get this out of here. And then we'll set our grid side to 5. And let's go ahead and start drawing in our graft. Okay, and then this whole section will be our bird base. Bring in our bird base. This goes in, let's use a copy. There's our bird base, right? Alright, now let's bring in our grafts. Alright, and then flip it over. Let's finish the crease pattern. E for extend. C for change direction. And there we go. That's our crease pattern. And to measure it, let's go ahead and set this up. Let's make this a 20 grid. And watch this. So here's the length of a toe. You see it's 1 unit here. Now the length of a leg is 8 units. Bam, look at that. Our math held through. So let's go ahead and fold the CP. We'll test fold it. And then we'll repeat the process of tweaking it and looking to improve and stuff. Let's go fold.